We're moving into Module 5 here, Introduction to Scouting and Monitoring. We've been doing series of these courses in different regions, as I mentioned earlier. And some of them are online. We want to give that option for people. And some of them are in person. And this module, when we do the in-person course, we go out in the field and actually do this, which is very fun. Kind of puts a big ribbon and bow around all of the things we talked about when you get to see it with your own eyes. But unfortunately, we can't do that in this kind of setting. So I want to just go over some of the resources we have and some ways to get out and look for these so you could do it on your own. As we talked about earlier in the intro and with Jennifer's presentation, some of these animals are microscopic, and you really need a microscope and specialized lab equipment, similar to things you would use in microbiology class to see them. Others are more easily seen either by different samplings or just by the naked eye in the field. So I'm going to talk about some formal and informal sampling techniques. Jeff covered this a little bit too when he was talking about looking for his earthworms, counting his earthworms. But today we're going to keep it to things that are pretty inexpensive to either make or purchase and really kind of user-friendly. Some of these sampling methods include pitfall trapping, using a Berlese funnel, or just visual observation, looking under boards or logs or rocks, or as you could see here in this picture, some of the vegetation that has been left on the field. And we do want to make this accessible and easy. So some things that would be really good to take out into the field, especially if you're doing this as a field-based monitoring or assessment, would be plastic dishes or white trays, so that if you collect a sample, you can kind of see things contrasting with the soil. Soapy water for the pitfall trap, and we're going to go through all of these in a little more detail. Needles and tweezers, a hand lens if you're in the field, and then if you really want to get into it, taking samples back to a lab or back to your office and extracting the insects out of them or the invertebrates and looking at them under a microscope. A lot of times, we're trying to do observations in the field. And so looking under things like the leaf layer, the top profile of the soil, under fallen logs or rocks or woody debris, you can find a lot of these animals in particular, and even Jeff mentioned this with the earthworms, in kind of moist environments. So just kind of doing some slight digging, not a lot of disturbance, but like we used to when you were a kid, flip over some logs, flip over some rocks, and see what's under there. Of course, on the screen here, these animals think, oh yeah, I could find a millipede or I could find a ground beetle, no problem. They're fairly easy to identify, especially if you have a nice, big, clear picture like this. But in the field, when they're moving, they're obviously still small creatures, and so it's a little more difficult. One thing you can do is collect soil samples and run them through this Berlese funnel. And, they have ones that you could purchase that you might see in an entomology lab, but you could also make one out of some simple household items, like you see here, an upside down milk carton and a plastic container, takeout container. What this is doing here is once you put that leaf litter and soil in the top, there is a sieve underneath, and the light heats everything up, and the insects fall out to the bottom. So it kind of separates them from either the soil material, leaf layer, whatever's in there, so you can view them more easily. This is something you would do if you were, taking multiple samples and collecting a significant amount of data. It's also just a fun demonstration to do. So really easy to make at home and very informative. You'll catch more of the smaller invertebrates that we talked about today doing this, or you'll be able to see them better. Pitfall traps. Again, a very easy concept. As you see here, it's basically a solo cup or other plastic cup planted into the ground with the opening flush with the top of the soil. And insects walk over it and fall in. And because of the steep sides of the walls, they can't climb out. Most of them can't climb out. So you want to make sure, sometimes they'll get on it. If a stick falls in, they'll get on a stick and be able to escape. Oftentimes we put soapy water or a little bit of alcohol in there to preserve the insects. And we leave them out for 24 hours. A lot of these insects are active at night. They're nocturnal. So we want to catch the population that is active during the day and night to get that full picture. So it's best if you could leave it out for a full 24 hours. And what you see here is putting a little roof over it. This is a fancier one, this little piece of metal here on the post. You could put, a rock over it as long as there's space for things to crawl under. What that does is prevents it from filling up with water or debris. And here you can see some of the results. So we have a series of different beneficial insect scouting guides. The soil scouting guide is what I've just showed. It walks you through the process, what you need, the materials you need, where to use it, when to use it, and how to scout. The same goes for foliage and flower scouting. You might find similar insects, the different life stages of these soil insects using foliar and flower scouting. When, if their larval stage is spent in the soil and the adult stage is spent visiting flowers, similar to what Jennifer was talking about with flies and fireflies. So it's good to do both if you can, but here the soil scouting would be the most applicable if you had to pick one. And there's a worksheet and data sheet included with this, with each of these guides. They're very simplified. It asks you to provide information about the site, the time the trap was deployed and emptied, so you know how much time it was out, and some of the conditions. So we know that a lot of our insects are obviously more active when it's warmer, when it's sunny, when there's low wind, because all of these, rain, clouds, high winds, all impact insects' abilities to move around. They are cold-blooded, so you are more likely to have a good catch on a day that's clear or partly cloudy and sunny and warm. And you can use this to compare different times of the year too. So if you go out and sample, in the fall, you might get something different than when you sample in the spring, summer. And there's some instructions here, conduct the monitoring twice per year from July to September, those seasons where, it is warm and sunny and insects are most active. But as long as you keep it standardized, you could use this in any way you would really like to do comparisons. Here's an example of a farm. We did a short course here not too long ago, and so I wanted to kind of just give the impression of what this looks like when we do it in the field. So here's, a fairly diverse small farm. They have raised beds for herbs. They have hoop houses. They have a pollinator garden. They have a children's garden and crops. And so my colleague deployed pitfall traps in these different locations, even on a small site, as you can see here. So when you look at different cover, different parts of the farm, fields that might be managed differently, and compare them, you might see some differences in that soil invertebrate community. Here's just some other examples of those cups. These are just simple red solo cups. Sometimes it's nice to put a flag by them so you could find them again easily. You could also do this right within a raised garden bed. If you have a larger site, you would want to, deploy more traps to get that full picture of what things might look like. These animals are also impacted by edge effects. So if you have a very large, let's say, crop field like corn or soybean, you might see that, oh yes, I'm seeing more of these animals in traps placed along the edge of the field where there is permanent habitat, where there are places to escape and find shelter from crop production activities. And then you could compare that also to areas of permanent cover or permanent habitat, like maybe a forest edge. Here they happen to have a perennial pollinator garden, so use that. And to help you in the field, we do have the large handbook I showed earlier, and I'll bring that up again just as a reminder. But we have these pocket ID guides for looking at the most common invertebrates you would find in urban soils. And then we have one, it's a more general, soil invertebrates as bioindicators. And it summarizes a lot of the things that Jennifer was talking about. It really kind of condenses it down to a couple major groups that you're most likely to see geographically, things that are widely distributed, and also, the larger insects and earthworms and things like that. And this folds up, and you could stick it in your pocket or put it in your binder board and take it out to the field if you don't want to carry a larger document. So we have both of those available online. You could print them out, and we have them available in Spanish as well. And this is the data sheet. This is just an example of the traps I just showed on that example farm, where they were, what the habitat type was, and what was found. And so even in this very small farm setting, you could see that, there were things that were different in some of the traps. Found a lot of isopods here. Some of the traps had springtails. Some of the traps had ants and springtails. And so I guess the point is you can really tell a lot even on a small site. And here's some pictures of them, again, just to show you the scale of the things we're looking at. That's where those hand lenses come in really handy. You could see a ground beetle right here. You could see ants and a cricket. So it's good to have a white tray or a white background, like I said earlier, that you could either empty your soil sample on or put the clear cup on so you can see that contrast a little better. Okay. All of that and more, again, is in the Farming with Soil Life handbook. It is a wonderful, just amazing handbook. It's fun to read. It has not only all the scientific information, cool facts you can impress your friends with at a party, but it's a very well done handbook. So I do encourage you, if you haven't looked that over yet, or if you don't have a desk copy, I would recommend it. We have a lot of other beneficial insect related, obviously, publications. Some that would be most relevant here is our firefly guides, our guides for creating beetle banks, of course, our book, Farming with Native Beneficial Insects, habitat planning for beneficial insects, which is a handbook version of Farming with Beneficial Insects. It's similar, and it has a similar format to our Farming with Soil Life with those invertebrate profile sections. And then a more general beneficial insect habitat assessment form and guide, not necessarily for soil inverts, but if you're interested in looking at, those predators, parasitoids on the farm, that would be a go-to as well. And that gives you, there's different categories where you look and assess different habitat needs, and it will tell you where you're deficient by a simple scoring rubric. So you can kind of focus your energy on where to make changes. Oops, I already showed that. So this is the last slide here. Well, one of the last slides. You'll also get this as a reminder at the end of the webinar. This is just a QR code to the course evaluation. We'll still have time for questions and everything at the end, but I just wanted to remind everyone that this is important to us. This is how we build these programs, how we improve them. And, this is, we use these comments too for grant reporting and things like that. So for us to keep doing this work, your feedback is really critical. So thank you in advance for that. Again, we are a donor supported organization. So I would just like to, again, acknowledge anybody here that is a Xerces member. If you're not, you can certainly sign up online on our website. And you get cool things in the mail like our Wings magazine, seasonal Wings magazine, and other things, announcements for events in your region and other information. So if you're not already signed up for our newsletters, please do. And with that, I am going to stop sharing and take any last questions from the Q&A. So here is, and this is good to share anyway, because there's so many great resources. I'm putting a link to our YouTube channel in the webinar chat. And so if you go to that, you could see the YouTube library is organized in different topics. So if you scroll down, you could see our Farming with Soil Life online short courses. There's already several posted from previous courses, and this will be posted under that header when it's ready. Thank you, everyone. I will give you a couple minutes of your time back today. And thank you for attending. I hope you do check out our resources and use some of these concepts we talked about today to make changes in your landscape. So I'll wrap up saying a big thank you again to Jennifer. I think she has logged off to do other things today. And Jeff for spending time with us, and everybody that attended. I hope you have a great rest of the week. And I will stop the recording there. And if you have any questions, please feel welcome to reach out to us via email if you think of something afterwards, or if you're looking for a particular resource and can't find it. We do have a lot of stuff on our webpage, so it can be a little it could be a little dense sometimes, but if you're looking for something, or if you need help reaching out to your local NRCS office, we can help you do that. So thank you again, everybody. Have a great day.